I'm very grateful that you are here. And I'm also very grateful to what Fianna Fáil have said, that, and what Terry Layton has said to Senator Terry Layton, that the Senate is a very fine place to kind of work this out, or try to work this out, because we have the time, we have the legal background, the legal knowledge, and we also have a different kind of energy here to find a solution to this. And you yourself, having been a senator here, know that. And so it's not a good thing that we would just let it be worked out in the Dáil. It's a very, very good thing that we would try to find a way forward in this very delicate human bill, and to the satisfaction of everybody. Now, I have to tell you that, Minister, and I know you're a woman of great argument yourself, and you'll take this completely as an argument, that I find the bill fundamentally flawed, and I couldn't and would not be voting for it, and would not be backing it in the form it's in. The first flaw is, and it's a one we have to get over, not to confuse, that the bill cannot confuse information with tracing. That's a major flaw. It confuses the right to identity, giving adoptees their information with their desire to meet or not to meet their biological parents. Most research shows that adoptees are looking for information, not to knock on the doors of their natural parents. And somewhere in the bill, outside the writing, there is an atmosphere of somewhat a demonisation of adoptees, that they're in some way that they're out to cause a certain harm, or that harm will be caused. I know you don't mean that, but it's there somewhere. Or in some ways disrupt the life of the birth mother, the birth father, or even the siblings. This is untrue. It's very dangerous, and I think it's a kind of a discriminatory belief. The first report, and I have to mention it here because I have the privilege to mention it, of the Collaborative Forum of Former Residents of Mother and Baby Homes, states that the bill, in common with all of its predecessors, conflates the right to personal information with the right to trace, which applicants have never claimed existed, nor have they ever asked for such a right to be created. And yet we are bringing it about as if they did. They have merely sought their own identities and their own information. Rights enjoyed and guaranteed by all citizens sitting here, but denied to them due to the circumstances of their birth. Rights to identity information are a fundamental right. Now, it may interest the Minister to know that in the 90s there were many organisations who provided a means of finding birth parents or adopted children. In fact, it kind of started in 1985, and people have been using many of these organisations and processes for years. There have been no lawsuits, and no harm has come about as a result. So the second point I would like to make, and it concerns today, it's very relevant today. You mentioned that you, Minister, and I'm delighted to hear it, that you are going to recontact, or if not, have initial contact with the stakeholders in the whole world of adoption, and it is a big world. I'm sorry that did not happen, and especially for Fianna Fáil as well, before, because we might not be in this impasse. I know it's been very difficult, and you were very gracious to us, the senators who met you recently, and senators who have spoken to your office. But generally speaking, I think there could have been a little bit more contact, but that's just a personal opinion. The third point for me is about TUSLA, as the sole agency is not equipped, in my opinion, to carry out what it's suggested should be carried out in the bill. It is unregulated under and I think you know that, and I've said it in your speech, in the 2010 adoption bill. And there are 15,000 people, birth parents and adoptees, are already on a contact register with the AAI, which is the Adoption Authority of Ireland, the National Adoption Contract Preference Register. And it is my belief, and indeed the belief of the Collaborative Forum on Former Residents of Mother and Baby Homes, that the NACPR should be relaunched on a statutory footing and rebadged to allow registrations for all, and that TUSLA should be ruled out from managing this database. Now, that's a very radical thing to say. I don't say that in a personal way, but I say it from a departmental way. I note your answer to Micheál Martin today, that TUSLA was getting extra money, because that is That's a very serious problem as to how they're going to do that, how they're going to actually have the resources and the money to do it. And I note your answer and about the time limits as well. All current information that the Adoption Authority holds on the 15,000 already registered will be lost or laid dormant as people are forced to re-register. And these people on the current register, both natural mothers and adoptees, put their names on this list in good faith and gave it the consideration it required. It is not a decision they came to lightly, and now under this bill we are somewhat suggesting that they start all over again. If the current register NACPR was placed on a statutory basis, active tracing and provision of information to these requests would begin immediately. TUSLA has undermined the civil registration system, in my opinion, and it has done so without the talent, experience and very expansive and very expensive training to do it. It is not regulated for adoptive services, and yet the bill suggests that they set up a quasi-legal process to argue their case for and against the release of information. This is flawed, it is unfair, it is costly, and it will cause undue delays. Now, they don't have the staff, the administration, the resources, the training, and they don't have the gestalt and Jungian theory to be able to decide psychotherapeutically what information to give out and what information to withhold. I understand by their very nature that social workers are extremely well trained and are very well meaning and do outstanding work. But it is an enormous task, and it's a task too great to ask. How will they fulfil without huge resources, time, space, technology, training, expertise, communication, specialism? You are really talking about a new department. And as I say again, they're not regulated, which is under the state regulated, which is the Adoption Authority of Ireland. Therefore, the adoption services would be unregulated. I know that when and this is a question I asked, when adoption agencies withered on the vine and bowed out of the adoption process for very natural reasons, the HSE nominated TUSLA as the body to which all files should revert. And TUSLA is now the second biggest holder of adoption records, 120,000. So they really can't have thought this through in the bill, because it's too huge and too profound to actually ask a department that is doing so much other incredible, important, profound and all-encompassing work in Ireland with young people. There is much talk about the whole area of the natural mother's right to privacy. Privacy can be both negative and positive. You've brought this up. Why does the natural mother's right to privacy supersede the adoptee's right to privacy or identity? Why is the adoptee vetoed by the mother? In fact, this bill is forcing natural mothers to know of their adopted child's efforts for information, whether they wish to know it or not. If adoptee was given the trust of the state to be able to source their records for their own personal use or reason, the natural mother need never know of this development, thus getting on with their lives and not initiating or tracing or a reunion. Whether or not tracing or reunions happen are completely separate issues. Protecting the privacy of the natural mother and the adopted child, it is possible, Minister, but certainly not in the bill as we know it. I think you've acknowledged that. The greatest abuse of the right to privacy is the interference of the state. And no one in this country needs to be reminded of what happens to women and children when the state interferes. I have read hundreds of emails from representative bodies such as the Adoption Rights Alliance, the Adoption Authority, the Adoption Identity Rights, lawyers, human rights lawyers, legislators, sociologists, mothers and adoptees. And two phrases come to mind that encompass the despair of this whole world: the architecture of containment and living bereavement. Now, I don't think it's sometimes not easy for people to understand what it is not to know who you are. I don't think it's we talk about transcendence. I can live in your shoes. I understand what you feel. No, you don't. You know, we don't. We really don't know how people are and how they feel when they do not know who they are and they cannot trace who they are. The isolation of that, the absolute isolation of that, is mind-boggling. And that there's all of these impasses put, for all the best reasons in the world, in front of them when they try. So I think we need to keep that in our minds. So it is my Minister, and I suggest that you consider 3 points. Information should be given out to every person requested by independent archivists. You get your personal data after an information session where you are informed on how the National Adoption Contact Preference Register works and the responsibility and opportunity it places on everyone. Family tracing is an optional service, well-resourced by trained expert social workers after that. That is what I suggest. However, I'm going to sit down.
No, you're in full flow, Senator.
No, there is one point that is extremely salvageable in the bill, and we mustn't forget it. That is the government's right to compel former private adoption agencies to hand over their records to the national database. This is a measure I fully support and I thank you for, but it is not the only one. I cannot support the rest. But I have faith in you as a woman, as a senator, as an ex-senator and as a minister. But we're not going to let this go. This is not
Thank you,
going
Senator.
to be let
Thank
go.
you. Could I now